Canada's largest private sector union, Unifor, has just adopted a boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS policy against the State of Israel. The resolution was submitted by a union local representing Ottawa GM workers. It called on Unifor to support the BDS movement against the Jewish state until such a time when Israel implements a permanent ban on further settlement construction in the occupied territories and establishes a viable Palestinian state. Now, basically, the BDS movement is a boycott Jews movement because anti-Semites don't like where Jewish people in Israel build their neighborhoods, as in, there are places BDS supporters believe Jewish people just should not be allowed to live. And so they put pressure on all Jewish businesses in retaliation. When you say it that way, man, sure sounds gross, doesn't it? Now, Unifor represents the majority of Canada's unionized auto workers and many of Canada's journalists, but of course, not us here at the very pro-Israel Rebel. Boycotting Jewish people because they're Jewish normalizes the anti-Semitism that statistics show is currently happening here in Canada. And it's a trait of many on the left who think of Israel as illegitimate. You'll hear it in many leftist circles, so it's really no surprise that this stuff becomes official policy inside leftist institutions like those in big labor. And they call it BDS because boycott all things Jewish sounds a little too much like something a Nazi might say. BDS is an Orwellian whitewashing of a very real ancient bigotry targeting people for their religious and cultural background. And that's why I think it is so appalling that someone like Premier Rachel Notley would freely speak at a Unifor conference last year. Now, Unifor's official policy on BDS wasn't adopted until just this past August, but in 2015, several unions, including Unifor, as part of the Canadian Labour Council, endorsed a letter criticizing Stephen Harper's federal government for standing up against BDS. The letter opens by saying Canada's central labour body is calling on the government to stop trying to shut down legitimate and non-violent criticism of human rights abuses by Israel. Unbelievable. They said human rights violations by Israel. Anyways, the letter complains that the Canadian government signed a memorandum of understanding with Israel that said the selective targeting of Israel is the new face of anti-Semitism. Yeah, it's true. Not buying from Jewish people because they're Jewish, that's anti-Semitism. Even if we water it down a bit, not buying from the whole Jewish community because you don't like what one member of it does or has done, that's anti-Semitism too. That letter was endorsed by Unifor, by PSAC, CUPW, CUPE, and the National Union of Public and General Employees. And after that letter was written, in 2016, Rachel Notley spoke at the Unifor National Convention. And Rachel Notley herself belongs to one of those endorsing unions, the National Union of Public and General Employees. Her husband belongs to CUPE. And besides herself, within her own caucus, Notley has 2 members of PSAC, 1 member of Unifor, 1 member of CUPE, and another one from CUPW. What I want to know is, do they renounce this blatant anti-Semitic letter from the Canadian Labour Council and this motion from Unifor? Because I sure do. Doesn't the NDP stand against all forms of bigotry? That's what the NDP keeps telling us about themselves. They're against bullying. They're against hate. So I want to know where they stand on this. The NDP, they're so quick to call anyone on the right a racist, especially us here at The Rebel. But I'm not supporting any organizations who boycott Jewish companies. Can the NDP say the same? For TheRebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. The mainstream media just wants us to shut up and go away, and the internet censors, well, they want to shut us down. But if you believe in free speech, go to standwiththerebel.com.